Guys, this is the last video on limiting reactant calculations. And in these videos, what we're going to do is we're going to find the amount of excess reactant that is left over. So this probably, and what I did was I just drew a line, and I'm still writing on those same note pages. So we're talking about the leftover. Leftover. I should have added that. And so again, I just recopied everything so I didn't have to slide my paper back and forth. I rewrote the equation. I rewrote my conversion scale. I'm off screen a little bit, so this is mass of B. And in this case, for the first one, instead of doing the mass of excess reactant left over, we're going to find the moles of excess reactant left over. We can solve for moles. A lot of times they ask for mass. But again, this is going to require a two calculation process. We said back at the beginning that of our reactants, the limiting reactant is what we find initially. And whatever else is on the left side of the equation, all the other reactants are excess. And usually we have two. It's possible to have, we have two reactants, one's limiting, one's excess. But we could have three reactants and have one limiting and two excess, or four reactants and have one limiting and three excess. Anything that's not limiting is excess. And so what we want to do is we want to now go from our limiting reactant to our excess reactant. So the first thing we have to do, step one, I guess you could say. So let's say step one is to find out how much excess we use. How much of the excess is used up? So to do that, remember the limiting reactant steers the reaction. He is the one in control. He decides how much of everything else gets used up. So my starting point is going to be here, and this is in moles. And my ending point, we're going to go to moles for this one, is going to be here. And I'm looking for moles. So this is going to be a pretty simple mole to mole calculation. When I frame this up, I start with, let's see, what color haven't I used in a while? Let's go with brown. So I'm starting with 750 moles of H2. That is my limiting reactant. And since I only need the mole ratio, I'm just going to write that in. I have 2 moles of hydrogen to 1 mole of carbon monoxide. Hydrogen has to go in the bottom. Cancel my units. And I'm left with 375 moles of CO that was used. That's what I used. But that doesn't tell me how much is left over. The problem is students will solve these and they'll think, okay, that's what I've got left. No, that's what you use. How do we find what's left over? That's step 2. So we're going to subtract the amount used from the starting amount. Subtract the amount used from the starting amount. Well, it told me back in part A that I had 500 moles of carbon monoxide. 500 moles of CO to start with. If I subtract from that, the 375 moles used, I get 125 moles left. Of leftover carbon monoxide. Now, if you're looking at the top of your paper, what you would notice is that in part A, if you just subtract the you had 500 moles of methanol that could be produced, and you have 375 moles that are actually produced, and the difference there is 125 as well. Depending on the mole ratio, sometimes that difference is also equal to this difference. But what we're going to see in the next problem is your mole ratios can vary, and you can't always just subtract in the beginning. You have to go this path if you're going to be sure of a right answer. All right, I'm not going to pause the video. I'm just going to flip my pages. So here is the second problem we've been working on, my calcium phosphate problem with my sulfuric acid. It's kind of squared up. And again, I've recopied everything, but this time we want to know what's the mass of excess reactant left over. So if this is my limiting reactant, that means that sulfuric acid has to be my excess reactant. And in this case, I want to go to mass. So step one is I'm going to find the amount used. So I start off with my brown, 0.806. Once you know what your limiting reactant is, so in the first part, we found the limiting reactant, that always becomes then what you start with. So all the other calculations after you find the limiting, start with the limiting because that's the one that's in control. This is going to be compound A, I'm starting with, and this is in moles. And I want to go to grams of sulfuric. That becomes what I'm solving for. So over here, I'm solving for grams of H2SO4. I'm going to want my mole ratio, and I'm going to want the molar mass of compound B. My mole ratio, let me write out my conversion factors. So I have 1 mole Ca3PO42 to 3 moles of sulfuric. And then I'm going to want to get from mole to mass, the molar mass of sulfuric. I don't think I calculated this already. I did not. So let's see, if I take my hydrogen are 1 apiece, so that's 2, sulfur's 32, and my oxygen is 16. I'm going to take that 4 times. I get a molar mass of 98. Okay, now I can insert my conversion factors. I've got calcium phosphate on the top, so this is going to have to flip. 3 moles H2SO4 over 1 mole Ca3PO42. I've got moles of sulfuric on the top. I'm going to have to flip this. Cancel my units. Let's see how I did. Cancel. It's going to cancel. So now I'm going to take 0.806 times 3 times 98. And I get 237 grams of H2SO4 used. But now, step 2, I have to find out how much is left. I need the amount left. Well, it didn't give it to me in grams. It says that I have 3 moles of this to start with. I started with 3 moles. So I'm going to have to convert that to grams. Remember to go from moles to grams. I have to do molar mass. So I'm going to have 1 mole of H2SO4 is 98 grams. H2SO4, I found that just above. When I multiply, I get 294 grams is what I started with. So if I take what I started with, 294, start, minus my 237 used, I find out that 294 minus 237, I have 57 grams left over. Okay, so that's 2 sample problems on how to find the mass of the excess reactant. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go back through the 5 problems we've been working on. You've already found the limiting reactant, you found the amount of product you can make. Now you're going to find how much leftover excess reactant there is. So you're going to go back through those 5 problems for your either in-class or homework assignment. And that is the wrap up on limiting reactants. We are all done. Breathe a sigh of relief. That's it for now.